All right, guys, here we go with Chapter 3 called A Strange Witness. There's a boathouse at one end of the lake. In the summer, people go there to rent paddle boats. Then they sat out on the lake for an afternoon of sunburn and mosquito bites. Go figure. The boathouse was closed for the fall. It would open again once sledding season began. That's because they made a fortune selling hot chocolate to frozen kids. Next to the boathouse, there was a garbage dumpster. That's where we found Mila and Kim, standing awkwardly on rollerblades. They were talking to an old man dressed in an overcoat. He wore a scarf and a cap pulled tight over his head. He had an enormous nose that reminded me of a bird's beak. The man squinted at us. "Jigsaw, this is Mr. Signorelli," Mila said. "He says he saw a dog that might have been Rags." The old man reached out a yellowed hand and I shook it. "Pleased to meet you." His grip was surprisingly strong. He pulled out a cigarette and lit it, coughing almost immediately. "I was just telling these young ladies that I did see something. Maybe it was your dog. Maybe not. His eyes ain't what they used to be." Yeesh. A witness with bad eyes is like a polar bear wearing a purple tutu. Detectives don't have much use for them. "I guess you could say this is my home away from home," he began. "Now that I'm retired, I spend most of my days in the park. I've made friends with a few squirrels, and I bring them peanuts, and we each keep each other company. I don't know who looks forward to our visits more, me or them." Mr. Signorelli took another deep drag of his cigarette. His eyes were red around the edges, and I noticed for the first time wisps of gray hair growing out of his ears. "The dog," I reminded him. "You said you saw a dog." "Pretty big one, too," he said, sniffing around by the dumpster. "Was he gray and white?" I asked. Mr. Signorelli ran his fingers across his chin. A long gray ash fell from his cigarette. "Maybe yes, maybe no. With these eyes, I couldn't be sure one way or the other. But it was a big dog, I'll tell you that." Mila coughed. "Mr. Signorelli, sir," she said, "please tell him about the girl." I shot a glance at Mila. "What girl?" I asked. "Well, I think it was a girl," Mr. Signorelli said. "Hard to tell these days, ain't it? Boys wearing long hair and earrings and all. I can't keep track." He chuckled softly to himself. "Anyway, she was petting the dog. They seem to be getting along pretty good." "Did you notice anything else?" I asked. Mr. Signorelli closed his eyes. For a minute, I almost thought he'd fallen asleep, but he opened them suddenly and smiled. "Pretzels," he said. "She was feeding him pretzels." Chapter 4, called Home Alone. When the sunlight touched the trees in the distance, I knew it was time to face my parents. They were gonna kill me. The surprising thing was, I didn't even care. There was nothing they could say or do that could make me feel any worse. We left the park, empty-handed. Lucy and Kim went home in the other direction. Heels dragging, I trudged between Ralphie and Mila. We stopped in front of Ralphie's house. "You okay?" he asked me. "Nope," I said. Ralphie opened his mouth to speak. Maybe it was a joke or something to make me feel better. That would have been Ralphie's style. But he stopped short, turned, and ran inside the house. I guess he knew there was nothing to say. Mila said goodbye too, but I wasn't listening. All I could think about was Rags. He was out there somewhere. Maybe he was lost. Maybe he was hurt. I didn't know. I only knew that he was alone. My family was already seated at the dinner table when I got home. "Where have you been?" my mother scolded. But when she saw my face, her expression changed. "Theodore," she said, "what is it?" My father got up and walked towards me. "Son, are you all right? Where's Rags?" It would have been easier if they yelled and screamed, but they didn't. They just hugged me and we talked, and they said everything was going to be all right. "It's not your fault," my dad said. "It'll be okay. We'll find Ragsy. Don't you worry." My father threw on his coat and took my 3 brothers, Billy, Daniel, and Nicholas, in the station wagon. They went looking for Rags. My sister Hillary volunteered to call the animal hospital. I felt a twinge in my stomach. animal hospital?" I asked. My mother gave Hillary a look. Just in case," my mother said. "I'm sure Rags is fine." My mom tried to make me eat some macaroni and cheese. I took a few bites, but my heart wasn't in it. I went into my room and pulled out my detective journal. On the next clean page, I wrote, "The Case of the Runaway Dog." Usually I loved mysteries, but that was when they happened to other people. This was my mystery, and it wasn't any fun. I pulled out a jigsaw puzzle. It was a picture of a caveman battling a saber-toothed tiger. I gave up after a few minutes. None of the pieces seemed to fit. And finally, I crawled into bed and pulled the covers over my head. Later, my father came home with my brothers. I could tell by their quiet voices that they'd come home alone. I rolled over in my empty bed. Rags was gone, and it was all my fault. All right, make some predictions. Do you think Rags is lost? Is he hurt? Do you think he's at the animal hospital? Do you think he ran away? I don't know. We'll find out next time in Chapter 5. See you later.